So I'm joined now by producer Jenny Hawley, writer and actor Emily Bridger, and director Ruth Lawrence of Little Orphans. Welcome, gals.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
We're so excited to screen this film as our opening film for the Women's Film Festival. You guys you're our poster children this year.
Well, I gotta say, when Jenny and I found, I think Jenny, I can't remember how it came, but I know that me, Emily, and Jenny all connected within seconds after we got the news. And I was standing on a Berry Hill in Trinity, coming down with a gallon of blueberries, and this means something. I did not give a crap about the blueberries. That news. It's a dream come true, and it sounds so silly in some ways, but I say this all the time. The Women's Film Festival is my film school, and I never thought I'd be sitting in an opening night audience with the film that I directed. So it's
during a pandemic.
Truly an honor. Truly.
Yeah, I gasped when we got the email.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's like truly thrilling.
We should ask people to record the reaction or something, because we have no idea. We just sent out the emails and hope that.
Yeah. It was a pretty special moment. And like I said, we all, like, within seconds were talking to each other. Yeah,
it was really great.
So let's dive into the interview. Let's talk about the film and the making of the film. Ruth, what was it about Emily's script that you knew you had to nail? What was the thing you knew you couldn't miss?
Well, because she had written it so well, I knew I could not mess up that relationship between those three women, and how critical it was to get the nuance of it. And I think when you watch the film, you know what I mean, because it just weaves into love and admiration and indifference and frustration and I don't want to say anger, but certainly
annoyance,
you know, and then always layered with love, like, you know. And when I think when the film finally ends, we all recognize that the only way that family could really keep existing is if something changed monumentally within it. So yeah, that's what I hoped I didn't mess it up. And Emily, maybe you can be the judge now that you've seen it.
I don't think you did. Yeah, I think you totally uplifted the material, so I'm happy.
How did you write such a realistic portrayal of the sort of the nuances, I guess, of families?
I guess I was writing for a long time, and I had a lot of help. I started writing it in Robert Chave's class, and then I took it to the Women's Work Festival. This is when it was a play initially, and Lois Brown dramaturged. And then I rewrote it some more, and I got a little bit of grant money, and I hired Carrie McDonald as a story editor. So I guess that's like how you, and then, and remember, Ruth, we had a reading with Carrie. This was like years and years ago.
Yeah.
So we just,
I know.
like time.
So long ago, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I actually forgot about Carrie until I saw her name in the credits, and I was like, oh my gosh, she was there when we first started with the script, like with the film script.
And then I went to Whistler, the Praxis screenwriting lab with the script, and I had Dennis Foon was my advisor, but I was also working with Ruth Atkinson and Patricia Grubin and Jason Bork, so just like had a lot of help.
Yeah. And the script had expanded so much, Angela, like when we actually, by the time actually that Jenny came on and we were looking at like budgets and what we're going to shoot and how long we had to shoot it, the script had expanded quite a bit, Emily? And we went, okay, we probably got 16 days. I think we ended up with 15, and then one day was like kind of a pickup day with some scenics. So then we knew we had to get real. And by that point, Sherry White was on as our executive producer. She was like, you don't want to shoot,
Yeah.
like, you don't want to shoot things that you're not sure of. And I was like, nope, that's right. So me and Emily sort of had a conversation and said, yeah, let's only be sure we're keeping the things that we want, what that's needed to tell the story. And in the end, we lost only 2 very short transitional scenes, and they were maybe a minute and a half. I'm not even sure it was that long of screen time. We shot them, we let them go, but it was like made no difference to the screen running time, really.
No, but we cut a lot at the beginning.
Before we shot.
Yeah, before we shot.
Before a shot, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cheaper than doing it.
And doing it after.
Very much.
It's a lot better.
And we knew we didn't have much time, and one of the things I'd said to Jenny and Emily was I didn't want to feel rushed every day to try and get to the end of the day, because I knew that's what you're going to be anyway on a low budget, because we didn't have time for overtime. We didn't have money for overtime. So I just wanted to be able to feel like that I could get it done. And we did. Like I think, Jenny, we had one day that went long.
We had one day that we did go long, and there was days that we wrapped earlier than an average film day, because we knew that our crew was out and they weren't getting as much money, like where it's low budget and things like that, as you normally would on certain features. So we tried to keep that all in mind, and I think Ruth did a great job of like not just being the director, but also like a team player, like part of the crew in a way, like knowing to not take advantage of people. And sometimes that happens. So I thought that was really great that I think there was like one day we wrapped at like 9.5 hours or something. It was crazy.
Hard to believe.
But that was only one day. But yeah, no, I think it was you guys wrote this, you wrote the script really well, and then it was a really good breakdown and knowing what we had to get. We got it.
Yeah, we all did a lot of work. Like Ruth and Stephanie had a lot of, like, you didn't have a lot of time to prep, but you had a real plan going in. And
yeah,
like Rhiannon and Martha and I, we all hired Lois Brown as an acting coach, which was Ruth's suggestion. So we were really prepared. Also, we just have a close relationship anyway, so that obviously helped.
Yeah.
In terms of
they had no rehearsal, Angela.
Oh, wow.
So the 3 leads had no rehearsal. I think we had 2 or 3 hours that we met. Hey, Emily, we met twice for like an hour and a half. We didn't get to the end of the script. And I remember all of us going, like, when I was leaving the second time, they were like, oh, so when will we finish this? And I was like, that's it. We're like,
and I don't think Andy wasn't there.
No, Andy didn't get any rehearsal. Actually, it was only the 3 of you. It was only the 3 of you. We didn't have Mark.
Right. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So it was like, I knew they were incredible, like clearly when you see the film. And I knew like we didn't have the money or the time really for rehearsal. And yeah, I did suggest to them to talk to Lois, because Lois has been a long time collaborator of mine. And I said, Lois, are you up for doing some acting coaching? Because I don't have time to rehearse with the girls. And if they're up for it, maybe that could work out. And all 3 of you, very graciously, Emily, took that on, because we couldn't even pay for it.
It was amazing. I would recommend it to anybody doing any sort of acting. Like, it was such a great thing to do. And it felt, well, for me, like, it made me feel a lot less anxiety too.
Yeah. They all came in so confident.
How did it work? How did the acting coaching work?
We all went separately, and like I know, like for Martha, for example, she like had a planner, and I think that's what she started, like planning her wedding, like she's the bride, and that was like kind of her work. And Rhiannon, we all kind of mapped out our timelines, and like I had done a lot of backstory just in the writing of it, but just like making decisions within the script about and it's such like there's in reading it, sometimes when I'd be writing, I'd be like, is every single scene the exact same in this? Like, are they just talking about their mom? But yeah, like finding like, you know, different levels in the script, which Ruth obviously helped and did a lot of work. I just helped, like brought that out in the direction.
Every scene was not the same.
I know, but sometimes it does feel like
No, but it's a very, and I really appreciate this about the film, it was a very woman-centered story. Like the men are kind of peripheral to the whole thing, which is so unusual. It's just so centered around the women.
Yeah, that is true. And I mean, that's kind of an Emily question, but I will say that that's part of that for me was then to put the right supporting cast in place, because you know, you had to let the women shine. And I knew that I had to have the guys literally in supporting roles. And that's what they did. I felt like they all lifted, like everyone had the guy, you know, who was their support, the pair in the show. I thought they all were very well. They understood their roles really well, I think, you know, like, because we had some,
even Peter Halley just sort of kept it all under wraps.
Totally. And still manages to crack me up every time I watch it.
Yeah, I know, me too.
Yeah.
But yeah. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry, my internet.
And then being periphery. Well, I'll go back to that a little bit and say, like, I guess in a way it was like, you know, when they talk about the circles of hell, the guys were kind of circling outside the circles of hell a little bit, and, you know, seeing these women and these relationships, because that is exactly what was going on. They were all, like, when you think about, you look back on the film, when you look at all those relationships between the mother-in-law to be, and then the three sisters, and then going down a level with the younger generation of Billy.
Yeah,
like there really was the 3-layer cake there, and it was an interesting kind of potion that you that you created there, Emily, with those people, those characters.
One thing I just thought of, this is what I was going to say, that when I was writing it as a play, like at the Women's Work Festival, we had a reading and Ruth was there. And I remember at that time, I wasn't really sure if it was like a Gwen and Tom story, like a traditional romantic. I think I was leaning almost more towards that kind of story because it felt like that's what I had to do. I almost needed permission to go the other way and have it be like a sister love story. And I remember Ruth like questioning me about that, like at the reading. This was like probably 10 years ago, 9, well, maybe not that long, but being like, so
that's how she got the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably is how I got the job, actually, because Emily wrote the script, so she had the play. Then I didn't know, but she made it into a film, and it was at the Women's Film Festival when she tapped on my shoulder and asked me if I was interested in directing her first feature. And I was like, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. This is it. This is the proposal that I've been waiting for, and I'll never forget it. Like, it's just so ingrained in me. I go, wow, that was the moment that changed everything. And it did, because I knew then that that's the story that had stayed with me from the time I heard that first reading, especially Kay's character. And I probably talked about that then, Emily, at the time, was the relationship between Gwen and Kay was so compelling. So compelling, because they are kind of alike, you know. They are like their mother, more so than Janet. Janet had stability with Maureen, but you two sisters were just on that same path as your mother, you know.
Yeah.
And I found that so compelling, and the thought of how from generation to generation we pass on our foibles and our faults, and then how does that keep repeating itself, and what possibly could stop it? What has to happen to stop that cycle?
Right.
So
Jenny, I wanted to bring you into this story. What was your superpower on this? I know you're a creative producer, not just a numbers gal.
No, I don't like to think of myself as just numbers or a paper pusher or anything like that. I don't know. I definitely think that there was, like, because of the budget, some problem solving that needed to happen throughout the script, because we didn't have the ability to do everything that we wanted to do. So even though I had to be the person to sort of highlight those issues, I felt like that I also tried to help creatively solve those issues. I didn't ever want to be the no person, just like, no, you can't do this. It was always, how can we do this?
You were so far from that. You were so far from saying no. You were always, if you came with a problem that had to be solved, you usually had a suggestion. And most of the time it was the right one. It may not have been the perfect one for the moment, but we ended up coming around to it. And if that solution wasn't one that really worked for what my vision was, man, every time you would go, okay, let's try it then. I tried to be generous too, but you were so generous. You were so generous because you were like always going, I don't think we can do that. Or maybe we can do it if we do it this way, So like you always had a solution. And I will say also that Jenny, by the time we got to the post-production, because I did most of the editing at a distance with Kimberly McTaggart, but I did 2 trips to Halifax. Jenny came up for the final picture lock, which really meant a lot to me because it was a really pressure-filled day. I was in Halifax alone. I had been sending it out to a few people to watch, but I felt such pressure because there was a couple of decisions that Kim and I were like kind of torn between. We didn't agree exactly on a couple of the last minute things. Jenny had already been planning to come. I was like, oh, this is good. She'll help us see which way is the right way. As it turned out, when we got there that morning, Kimberly said, I know I said this yesterday, but I think I was wrong. I think we should really kind of go for this thing. And I was like, oh, so relieved. And then from then on, Jenny, like you just knew where that film was heading. Like you knew what the music was that I wanted, really. You knew what the sound of it was. Like Jenny was there the whole time through the post-production with me. And whenever I had it, like I would go, I got this nagging feeling about this thing. Can you tell me what it is? And Jenny would go, is it that? Because that jumps out. I was like, yeah, that's it. Okay, good. And we would always find the solution together. And usually almost every time we agreed on exactly what the notes were that still needed to be tweaked. And I will give Justin Mertzoy full props. That guy took, oh my God, must have took 1,000 notes from me. 1,000, no less.
What was his role?
He was the
composer, but because we didn't have that much money, Jenny said, do you want to do it all? Do you want to do the sound, edit, mix, Foley, and composing? Because we literally had enough money to pay for one job.
Yeah.
And we said, can you do 4 for the price of 1? And he foolishly said yes. Foolishly. And we told him, like, we think you're a little bit crazy, but we're happy to have you. And he brought it.
Let's do a round of applause for Justin.
Yeah. And up to the last note that I gave, which was after we had already submitted to Finn, because the film was in, we'd already submitted, and there was a couple of little things that weren't sitting right, Jenny. And I said, man, we gotta fix that. It's gonna be, I always talk about my cringe factor. Like I would cringe if I left it in, and I can watch the film with no cringe now.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Because he went back and changed the last 5 notes that I gave him. I think he was driving.
Emily, I want to ask you about the sort of Newfoundland that you've created in this story. And I don't know how much of it was created by the director, by Ruth, or how much of it you had in the script to choose to show Newfoundland in the winter, in the sort of mucky, wet part of winter. I don't know if that was your choice or if that was when you could get your, director and your camera person, or did you want to show that?
As a lot of things happen in this film, it was initially written for summer. It was a summer wedding because that just made sense to me production wise, but just because of like scheduling, we had to shoot it in January, February. And I actually think it works way better for the story. And like that feels more like the truth. The snow and the slush than like the, you know, the nice tourism commercials, which are really nice, but like that, or like a nice summer day or whatever. I mean, the weather probably wouldn't have been very good in the summer either, but.
When I think back on it, it's kind of surprising now, that it was ever a summer film, isn't it?
I forget it, but yeah, it was, and that's why there were so many outdoor scenes.
Well,
it was cold.
We were supposed to film in like end of March, April. That was our goal, and this was, let's say, early December that we were sort of planning when we were going to film. And then we heard about a couple of TV series or a film that was coming in February. And then we were like, oh, perfect. So everyone will work on that. Then they can get off of it and come on to ours. So that was, you know, all good. We were planning along. And then, of course, I got the call, oh, no, we're pushing till March now. So it was either we shot way later, right, and we didn't want to do that, or we had to pull up. So on mid-December, we decided to shoot on January 23rd. So we had our production meetings, I think Christmas Eve.
Yeah, our first
one. And yeah, it was just madness. I remember it quite clearly.
Everyone in Rocket Bakery was sitting there at like having a Christmas coffee, and we were planning our film shoot.
Yeah, we were trying to do a breakdown of the script. But yeah, so it was a whirlwind. But it's funny how things happen, because like Emily and Ruth just said, this was a winter, like felt like it should be a winter wedding, and it just kind of worked in the film's favor, I think.
Yes,
maybe not.
You create that closeness that happens in winter when you sort of do feel like you're hunkered down here and you know you're gonna survive.
Yeah, and you can kind of understand why they wouldn't want to stay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's true. Even the fox was running away. The fox showed up and said he ran away.
What were you trying to say about motherhood in this film, Emily?
It's funny. Like when I started writing it and started thinking about it, I was, you know, in my 20s, early 20s. And then, when I tapped Ruth on the shoulder, that's when I had a 5-month-old. And then when we found out, I think I had Elizabeth the week we found out we had telephone funding. So I became a mother, I guess, towards the end of this process. And I think that changed for me. But I think in terms of like family and motherhood, I think what I wanted to say, and I guess with the men too, like different people can be the maternal one. Different people have different roles. It's more about just showing up and being a unit, and that's the most important thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the things, do you mind if I jump in a little bit?
Go ahead.
So one of the things someone recently said to me, that one of their favorite lines is "Love is a decision," and I thought, yeah, like that was definitely a line that always jumped out at me, and it's actually why I chose to play that line the way we played it in the film, which was a bit of a risky decision, but I think you really hear that line because of it. And you know, I became a mother. I was not planning it. I was still in theater school. Motherhood was not a decision for me, and motherhood is not a decision for many women. Mm-hmm. And we embrace it, or we struggle with it. Maybe sometimes we embrace it and we still struggle with it. And it's not like it always is presented as being like this natural thing that just happens. Like it's not. it's a lot of on the job training to be a mom. And if you're a working mother, probably even more so, because you're missing so much and you're always struggling to kind of put in pieces that you miss, you know, while you're at work and stuff. So to me, that's partly what the film is saying too, is that sometimes it's not a decision, but you have to figure out the consequences.
Yeah, and I think
of it.
also, like, no one asks about the father, which is often the case, and no one asks in this film. And like, that's part of the problem too, why women struggle, you know. So, but I wanted Tom and Des, Uncle Bill, to kind of be good mothers as well in the film.
And they were, which was so wonderful. Yeah.
And they did have a mother. They had Maureen, but I think because they couldn't know that they had a mother, but they did.
Yeah, there was such a resentment. Well, yeah, resentment, I guess, and loss for them, trauma, that they couldn't fully accept her. And like, I find Kyra heartbreaking in that role, like, because she is, man, she's given it her all. She's given her life to children that were not hers.
Yeah.
Like,
for a hard time.
And she really, like, I find Kyra wears that, you know, it's just a gorgeous skin she put on for that character. Just beautiful.
Emily, will you act in another film that you've written?
I don't know. No plans to. I have, yeah.
What was that like?
I mean, I think if we didn't have the team we had, it would have been different. Like, it meant a lot to have, you know, Ruth and Jenny there, and Ruth directing, and then acting with Rhiannon and Martha. I think that's what really kept me. I did have moments where I was unsure if I could do it before we went to camera.
I only remember one moment during the shooting. And it was a day when you were just exhausted because you were being a mother.
Yeah, like I was breastfeeding while we were shooting. So I was like up in the night. Elizabeth was coming to set. I was going home. Like, it was just, and yeah, I was just like, is this a good idea? But I did feel pretty strongly that like the connection that Rhiannon and Martha and I had was valuable enough to. I didn't want to like drop the ball either. I was like, I don't know if I can do it, but we got through it.
You did not drop the ball.
No, you didn't drop the ball. You got more than through it. What was it like, Ruth, directing the power trio there of the three girlfriends?
Yeah, it was something else really, because like they pretty much, I can't remember how early, but fairly early on, Emily, we knew that it was going to be the three of you fairly early on. And so it was like one less choice I had to make, for one thing, which is great. Like, I just knew taking on this film meant I had my three leads. So it took away the stress of like trying to figure out how to find the perfect people. It was written for them,
right, and
written beautifully for them too. And they just dropped into those roles. So like a pool ball in a socket. It was amazing. They like I said, they came to set with it. And certainly they're not like these characters, you know, it's not a case where they're playing themselves. So for me, there was lots of joy in it. The other thing was that, I mean, all of them are incredibly experienced actresses. And so they knew how to take direction, but they also knew how to bring something to set too. Like, so I didn't have to do all the work. They brought a choice, then we worked with it. Sometimes we made different choices. Not too often, but there was certainly, I'm a tweaker, eh, Emily?
Mm-hmm. It's good. It's fun.
I'm a tweaker. Yeah. So, and I never felt like I had a big, massive job ahead of me in terms of directing. So that was, and there was a lot of trust put in me. That was how I felt. I knew that I had their trust. And that meant a lot. It just meant, it gave me the freedom then to ask them to do difficult things. And they did. I think all of them did. And it was, you know, there was a lot of vulnerability on set. None of them shied away from it. I felt like there was another one little thing I wanted to say, and it might come back to me as we talk, but when you asked first about what was it like to direct the three powerhouses, but I know what it was. They didn't bring that on the set. They didn't bring that sense of like power and ownership over it. They came as a team. That's what I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And let me into that world, because they're, you know, the three of them are really close friends and have been for a long time. Would have been very easy for me to be shut out of that. Very easy. But the fact that they let me in, and Jenny too. I shouldn't say just me. And actually, and Stephanie, who shot it, because those are the intimate relationships that you have on a film set when you're in the starring roles. You have to, you know, really trust in those people, that they're making you look good, that they're doing everything to lift up your performance, and you have to trust that they're going to deliver on that promise of making you look and perform to your best.
I want to ask you about the relationship with Stephanie. Tell me about the choice of Stephanie as cinematographer.
I met Stephanie in Halifax through Ashley McKenzie, who's a filmmaker that I really admire, love her work. And I got to know Ashley. You know how sometimes you're just drawn at a film festival to the people that you're like, yeah, I want to be that person's friend because I dig so deeply what they're doing. So Ashley McKenzie was one of them. And sadly, I haven't seen her much because, of course, she's in Nova Scotia. I'm here, but I still follow her work. And she said, you need to know Stephanie Weber-Biron. And I said, yes, I do. I want to know her, because I'd seen some of Stephanie's work. I said, please introduce me. She did. So we talked about like films that we loved, but also I talked a lot about the films that I'd seen that Stephanie had done. So like Xavier Dolan's, but also for me, a seminal film of Stephanie's was Jason Buxton's Blackbird. And I don't know if any of you know it. I loved that film. And it was about an incredibly vulnerable young man who is, you know, in a system that is working against him, I guess, to say the least. And so I loved the way that her and the director had shot that. I rewatched the film so many times because I was like, there's something really special in this. So I brought, when we had an opportunity during Picture Start to bring a DOP in, I asked her if she'd come down and do my short film. She didn't have to. You know, she was doing big films, feature films, working with Guy Madden at one point while I was trying to get her down here. And I said, please come down, because I just want to just test it out. Let's just see what we think, see how this relationship is. Oh, it was so easy to work with her. She knew, as soon as I started describing what my vision was, she knew what it was. She brought so much to it. And again, this time, I think I might have said to Jennifer and Emily right away, like it had to be Stephanie. We just had to kind of work around that. And luckily for us, because we pushed a few times, she was always available. And she came down, and she had to leave her little girl at home to do that. So motherhood figured prominently in on our set. But yeah, Stephanie was, she came down. We had, I think, Jenny, we had 4 days prep.
If that, yeah.
Yeah, with her.
It was not very much.
No, so we started working on the shot list right away. And we got through almost half of the script when we said, okay, we're shooting in 2 days. Now let's just go back to the beginning and figure out like what's going to come up first. So then we were literally week by week, we were shot listing for the week ahead. So we would finish on Friday. Stephanie and I would spend the entire weekend together, Saturday and Sunday. shot listing the whole weekend, going back to work on Monday. And we had 1 week, oh my God, Jenny, which was so smart. I forget what happened, but one of the actors wasn't available or something.
You're talking about the week that I did. So when we started filming, I didn't ever want to start on a Monday because someone told me you never start shooting on a Monday, and it was the best advice anyone's ever given me. And so start shooting in the middle of the week because then you're just prepping. Your prep is much easier. So we only had, I think, 2 days in our first week.
Yeah.
And because we did like Thursday, Friday shoot. Then the next week, I think we did a Monday, Tuesday. We were off on Wednesday, and then we shot like Thursday, Friday because an actor wasn't available. And I was like, well, let's just take a day off. We're not union.
Yeah.
Just do it. So anyways, it worked out because as we're talking about low budget, the crew had a fairly easy first couple of weeks to get used to filming.
Mm-hmm.
And then it really helped Ruth, I think, and Stephanie and Emily and me especially too, like just pace ourselves so we could get caught up, because where we only had 2 weeks to prep the whole film, it was like, all right, if we can do it a little bit slow pace at the beginning, we'll be in a much better position. And I think it really helped us.
Oh my gosh.
Gather our thoughts.
It was a gift. It was such a gift. Even the week after it happened, I remember thinking, thank goodness that happened last week, that we had 2 days, day off, 2 days, 2 days off. Oh my gosh.
Such a simple thing to have such an impact, right? Yeah.
It's huge. And you know, like we were working, like you said, we were working long hours, like not on set, but we were like coming and working after we would walk off set. So it was a simple thing. And when Jenny suggested it, she goes, we're just going to take that day off. I just remember going, yeah, we can do that. Right. And we did. And it made all the difference. Yeah.
So we've only got a few minutes left. I just wanted to ask one last question, which is kind of a big one, I guess. You know, you do these massive projects that take 10 years and then you're immersed in this, you know, shoot and then the post-production. I guess you've had a little bit of distance from it to reflect on what it is you're going to take away from this project. What is the medal that you're going to wear from Little Orphans into your next project?
Who wants to go first?
I mean, I guess it's an obvious one, but who you're working with is everything. Obviously, I'd like to work in I think a bigger budget would be better, but I do think small is good. And thinking, like, I guess because we had the small budget, like when Jenny came on and she's like, we have to cut these locations and we had to do some creative work with the script. It actually made the script better because it forces you to think about like why things are there and what you need. So just being, I guess, diligent in that way. And yeah, I don't know. I felt like it's been a really good week. It's felt really good, I think, having the film finished, and hopefully I learned something.
I know for me, it's been everything Emily just said, like who you're working with and all that. But being the first feature that I've produced, you know, we shot this in January of 2019 and we're only just finishing. So it's a very, very long process. Now, we did take some extra time in editing and stuff like that, but I think what Emily said, like knowing who you're working with, because you're going to be tied to them for a very long time, but also that you're doing scripts, say like from my point of view, that you're doing films that are important to you as well and that speak to you, because, you know, it's representing kind of who we all are in some way, like the kind of stuff we want to put out into the world. So I think, you know, I know for me, like when I read that script, I was just like, I get this, like I can relate to this in some way, not necessarily like exactly, but I don't know, I felt a connection to it and I was like, I want to be part of this. And now knowing how long this takes and how much you have to put into it, I'm still really glad that I did it, and all the stresses that came with it are worth it. So I think, yeah, definitely making sure you're putting out content, not just for the sake of it, because sometimes you do that like for a job or whatnot, but you want to put out things that are meaningful.
Yeah. And I'll add to that. So I kind of heard you guys say, like, it sounds to me like love and respect, and I would say generosity and kindness. Like one of the things that I really wanted to do with my first feature was to feel good. I wanted to feel good every day I went to set. I wanted everyone around me to feel good. Not that they had to be happy, but that they were satisfied and felt fulfilled being on that set in the job that they were doing. Like, no matter what it was, there's always room for kindness. There's always room for respect and generosity. And that's what I felt through prep, through the shoot, and through the post-production. And so it made me, well, it taught me that that is possible. You know, if you lead that way, that others, you know, are going to follow that. I shouldn't say not follow it, but others will also see the value in that, I guess, you know, and that you can have a loving, kind, respectful relationship in doing this work. And sometimes that's really hard because the pressures are so enormous: money, time. And in this case in particular, we had so much family around us. Like, the cast was family, some of the crew, the musicians were family. Like, there are it's like a family tree if you plot it out, where how the film was built. It was built around family in so many ways. So, and I am so very thankful to every single person who gave their time and energy and their amazing ideas to it, because it took a kind of a familial bond, I think, like building that in order to get that kind of beautiful feature that I feel like we ended up with. I think so anyway. I mean, that's when I watch it, I enjoy it, and I you know, always sort of thought, oh, how do directors ever watch the work that they create? You know, because I'm sure you always see the things you could have done better, and that's true, but we left that stuff out. We didn't have to include it. We had so much good work in front of us that we could leave out the things that we weren't proud of. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, that was, yeah, that amazed me, actually, that we could do that on 300,000.
Congratulations. And we're so proud. We're so proud to have opened the festival with Little Orphans, and ironic, you know, that it's such a family piece with the name like Orphans, but congratulations.
We're all orphans in a way. We all, what did they say? Like, you live alone, you die alone. And like, that is kind of the universality, I think, of the film that Jenny talked about when she said, like, she could relate to it. I don't think you have to be a mother to relate to this film. Yeah. I think the universality of being alone is a big thing in this film.
Well, thank you, guys, and let's hope we can have a drink together after.
Yeah, that would be nice. It's nice to see you this way, but it'd be really nice to see you in person.
In a room, yeah.